I'm Patrick Sims, and our guest today is Allison Saylor, a marriage and family therapist in the San Francisco Bay Area.
I'm an MFT, which is a master's level psychotherapist. I see mostly patients in San Francisco, but I have some traveling to see me from other counties in the area.
Mhm. And how long have you been?
It's hard to talk about this because it makes me feel very old, but I have been practicing psychotherapy since 1994.
Mhm. Now, the reason I wanted to chat with you is, as you may have noticed, there's an emergency going on nationwide, worldwide, and lots of people are at home with their family or with roommates, or many people are alone. And you, as
hmm
a marriage and family therapist, what are you experiencing with your clients?
Um, well, I've had a lot more need, and on some level, I have to admit that it's a relief to still be working because many people are not. Um, but more than that, I'm really feeling for what people are going through because everyone is doing worse than they were. I mean, people that really did not have emotional issues of any great depth before are getting a lot of anxiety now. But people that had these mental health diagnoses, struggles before this happened are having an extremely hard time. So anxiety across the board and, conflicts with families, et cetera, but then worsened problems like people in recovery are relapsing, people with depression are getting much more depressed. People that had anxiety before, it's spiking. It's just, there's so much unknown. There's so much danger now, just to our health, that it is affecting our feeling of safety emotionally. And that can go back to, it's a real thing happening in the world. It's affecting everyone. But it's also affecting people that have had experiences growing up, abuse, etc., where they were, traumas, that they were unsafe already and already have these things. So it's an enormous trigger.
So, as it is right now, you're saying that what we're feeling is unsafe, what many people are feeling.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, unsafe.
Unsafe
Uh,
financially, unsafe
yeah.
emotionally. Could you elaborate?
Yes. Well, we don't know what's going to happen with the economy. So people are feeling unsafe in terms of finances. And finances go right down to that instinct around shelter. Am I going to survive or not? So even though we can intellectually say, well, it's a job and I'll really be okay, but on a physical, nervous system level, our bodies interpret it as mortal danger. We're not going to have shelter. We might perish. So there's the economic level, but then there's the physical level. We are in danger. Every time we go to the store, we could actually catch something that could kill us, or, make us very sick. They could bring that home and get a loved one sick. They could perish. It's very, very unsafe times. And we're all sitting with the great unknown. We don't know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So the physical danger, economic danger, it translates to emotional feeling of danger and lack of safety.
Now, with the feeling of danger, some people respond to that differently.
That's correct. Yeah. So what they have found from doing a lot of research around our nervous system, what they have found out from looking at animal studies, animals do, like animals that are prey animals when they encounter a predator. Everyone knows about the fight or flight response.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually three. There's fight, there's flight, and there's freeze. What the research has told us is that when a human feels a lack of sense of danger, it's on a nervous system level, it's the same thing that animals feel when they're in danger.
Mm-hmm.
So if an animal is being pursued, for instance, by a predator, and it will either go into fight mode and try to fight it off if there's a chance of doing that or there's no escape, or they will flee, which is the flight response. There's actually a third one. I mean, everyone knows about the fight or flight, but there's actually three, and the other one is freeze. So if there's no chance of fighting the predator, there's no chance of getting away, the animal freezes in place so that the predator either doesn't see them or they're dead and the predator doesn't want to eat something dead. That's one of the reasons opossums do it, because there are predators that will only eat live animals. And just kind of a gruesome example, but it relates directly because we are animals. We forget that sometimes, but we have the same similar nervous system. So people that go into the freeze mode because of lack of danger, because of this pandemic, because of the shelter in place, they find, people are finding themselves with a lack of motivation. They're hearing about people cleaning out their closets and learning to play the piano and learning to speak another language, and they find themselves unable to get off the couch. That's a freeze response. And if you're having a flight response, it's a pretty tough time for that, because where are you going to go? And it's good if somebody has some sort of exercise routine that they can still do during this time. And the fight response is a really awful one to have during this time too, because what happens with that in these modern civilized times, it's not a physical fight. Sometimes it is, but more often it's you're fighting with your spouse, you're fighting with your roommates, you're fighting with your family, your kids, and actually, sadly, even the physical, because domestic violence has spiked markedly during this pandemic.
It's been a little over a month that the Bay Area implemented shelter in place. What's happening to people stuck in a place that they don't want to necessarily be? Home is great, but you're home all the time now.
Right. And even if you fantasized about not having to go to work and getting to stay home and get paid to watch Netflix all day, once you can't, you're going to want to get out. But it's especially hard, what I've seen, especially hard on people who are single and living alone, because we are social creatures. We are not supposed to be living alone. And we are made for connection from the moment we're born. We're supposed to be in connection. We're pack animals. We're more like dogs in that way than cats. So we really need to have that. We need to be part of the pack. And that increases that feeling, that lack of safety. So I've seen greater depression, relapse if someone is struggling with addiction, greater anxiety for people in that situation. And then families, especially if both the parents are working, they're managing, the stress level is really high, because the schooling, the teachers, the four teachers, they had a lesson plan set for the entire year, and then suddenly everything has to go online, so they have to redo everything, a whole new curriculum. They're kind of building that plane as they're flying it, and it's very hard because different ages respond differently to online learning. It's not something that's ever been done before in the schools, and kids that have learning disabilities, autism, I mean, it's pretty hard for them to get benefit out of it. But even like nursery school kids, like one family I'm working with has a nursery school child, and they got to talk to their teacher, their nursery school teacher, on Zoom, and it's not like any lesson plan happened, or they were learning to count or do the alphabet. I mean, they were in kindergarten, but just getting to see their kindergarten teacher. And, actually one of the pluses, I've been talking about the negative things, but, there have been some unexpected, wonderful surprises that have come out of it. And one of them is that kids are dying to go back to school. Like their parents never would have anticipated that. And it's not necessarily that they're like dying to go study for exams or whatever, learn science, math, multiplication tables. They're missing their friends and missing being part of that community. So they're going to be very eager to go back. So the parents, especially if both of them are working, they're working really hard to try to keep their job together and try to help their kids. And it's almost, even if there's online learning, there's a lot of aspects of it that are like homeschooling. It's like, well, okay, suddenly you have to learn how to be a teacher, and for how many ever different ages that you have and different curriculums they're getting online from their teachers.
And teachers have to work from home as well.
The teachers have to work from home as well. Yeah. People in roommate situations, those are all very different. You know, it's so expensive in the Bay Area that a lot of people are living with roommates just because they can't afford to live alone, not because they want to live alone. And so now people are sheltered in place with people that they might not even like all that much. So
I know nothing of that myself. Yeah.
So there's problems there, and you can actually feel more lonely in a group of people that you can't relate to than even on your own. So that can be very lonely. And then there's also been conflicts with people having roommates that aren't taking this pandemic as seriously and the safety measures you're supposed to take as seriously, and then possibly coming back and putting everyone else in danger.
I want to talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
Because I definitely am in that situation with an elderly man who he goes out. The other day I found out that he went to San Francisco, took the bus to BART, and went to from BART to Muni. He went to the Castro to go see his girlfriend, and then he came back home, no masks, no protection whatsoever. And so we encountered, you know, we sat and talked to him and tried to engage him in about how you are endangering the rest of us. And it blew up. He felt that he was he could do whatever he wants, and he was being attacked, and you know, absolutely, it just went south.
So yeah, roommate conflicts, you know, they often don't get resolved, and if people have an alternative living space, maybe moving in with someone, their partner before they, or whoever they're dating, before they normally would have, going back with parents. There are some people that live alone that are finding themselves too lonely, and so they're moving in with the other person living on their own, a friend, and then they're quarantining themselves for 2 weeks in, you know, different parts of the apartment or house. You know, backtracking, I forgot something with families that's happening right now, and there's really no legal precedent, is what do you do if there's a divorce and the kids are supposed to be half-time with one parent and half-time the other? And kids can so easily pick up this virus, not have symptoms, and then take it to the other house. And so people are trying, and also if people were in process already with a custody dispute, the courts have been on hold for a lot of this. And there's no precedent, there's no legal precedent for it. So many people are frozen in place, the kids at the other house, and they can't agree to have the kid come back for their agreed upon time. People aren't getting to be with their kid, or they're being with their kid full time because the custody battle can't be sorted out now with the courts.
I'm Patrick Sims, and our guest today is Allison Saylor, a marriage and family therapist in the San Francisco Bay Area. I have a friend here in Alameda who is very much in that position, and his kids are with him half the week, and then with their mother the other half, but they're still continuing that.
Oh wow!
But being as careful as they can.
Yeah, it's really tricky because you don't want to separate the kid from either one, but
I think what's happening,
there's no way to do it safely.
I think what's happening for many people is there's this trust that you have to have, and you're hoping that the partners, the roommates, the people that you're sheltering in place with are being as careful, hopefully, as you are. And but I also see people out, like young people, you know, a car full of young people who don't look like they're all the same family, and
Yes.
having a great old time. And so, what can a family or people who live with these other people, what can they do to feel safe? Or is that part of the
That
anxiety?
one is really a tough one, because there are still to this day some people that are not taking it seriously.
Hmm.
There's this idea that, well, it only afflicts the old or people with underlying health conditions.
Hmm.
And although, statistically that's true, there are younger people that have gotten sick and died. But somehow at this point, there are still some holdouts. And, no one I work with has really had much in the way of success in reaching them directly. It's only been their awareness of outside events as this pandemic has unfolded
Hmm.
that gets them to start taking it seriously, because we know this pandemic is going to become closer and closer to each one of us. Like, if we don't know anyone now that's sick, we will have a friend of a friend who got it, and then eventually that will get closer and closer. Like, an interesting thing that's happening is that a lot of the millennials I work with have boomer parents who aren't taking it seriously. I've seen probably, I think every single millennial I work with has boomer parents is actually, it's a role reversal. They're trying to get their parents, they're scolding their parents to try to get them to be more safe and to be more responsible. And there's a lot of ideas floating out there about why this is happening. And the one that seemed the most compelling to me, of course, none of this is anything that's proven, but just, that boomers are of a generation that feels really young and healthy, and might have been into eating healthy their whole lives, into
Hmm.
natural foods, organic, and not wanting to think of themselves as older, so therefore more at risk. So that may be one explanation. But again, I haven't seen any of these folks successful at getting through to their parents directly. It's only as the parents have seen the pandemic worsen have they begun to take it seriously and take more precautions.
Do you have any tips for families or people living alone in terms of routines, schedules? What do you do?
Okay, well, yeah, a few of them. One, I think the most important is to understand that whatever you're going through, if it's anxiety, depression, lack of motivation, stress, it's very, very normal under the circumstances. So you don't start thinking that you've got some marked pathology psychologically. These are pretty normal responses to some pretty exceptional, extraordinary times.
Mhm.
People that are still working, it's really important to try to figure out a way that you can get a good divide between when you stop working and when your evening time begins, because there's no divide any longer. There's no commute from the office to home, and people are finding themselves overworking. Probably some of that too is a fear of losing their jobs, but we know that even in normal times that just leads to more stress. I say this to everyone I work with, that meditation is the very best non-prescription way to lower the production of the stress hormone cortisol. Not everyone likes meditation. A lot of people have tried it and hate it, but it's the best way to calm your nervous system. Yoga is moving meditation, so any kind of yoga exercise. But the main thing is to stay in contact with people as much as you can. And of
Hmm.
course, we know that doing it online or on the phone is really will never come close to an in-person contact, hanging out. But it's something. So to do as much of that as you possibly can. And I think too, just looking for, since we can't have these big things in advance to look forward to, like people's weddings are canceled,
Hmm.
people's vacations are canceled. So to try to think of smaller things to look forward to, like maybe getting more into whatever food you do manage to get from the store. I had a friend that said she went to the grocery store with a grocery list, but it turns out it was just a wish list. So maybe it's a new recipe you came up with that you wouldn't have if you had everything you wanted to get from the store, or to look forward to a movie, to appreciate the free time that you do have available. People are going out for walks and they're not on the phone anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
They're just taking everything in. They're loving it, and just to enjoy that time. And even, even in the middle of New York City, people are hearing birds for the very first time, and to just enjoy that symphony, because every bird has a beautiful song, and to just, let yourself get into every single note of that beautiful song.
I'm Patrick Sims, and our guest today is Allison Saylor, a marriage and family therapist in the San Francisco Bay Area. I know you've said that psychotherapists also have meetings and amongst yourselves. And what are psychotherapists dealing with professional wise?
Everyone, I'm in a few consultation groups, and I have a lot of friends that are therapists, and they're all experiencing the same thing. I mean, the same thing meaning they're getting old clients that want to come back. Mm-hmm. They're getting people that want to meet more frequently. And basically, it's not just irregular psychotherapy. It's like every session is a crisis session. Mm. So it's very tiring. Some therapists are having a hard time doing them by Zoom. It really isn't as personal. But yeah, just the hardship of what people are going through, but also trying to help people that are going through the same thing you're going through. It's sort of like after 9/11 doing therapy with people. I was also in shock. They were in shock. So to be the caretaker and the provider in those moments when you're wanting some of that yourself.
Do clients find you, or do they come through a program, or are there specific kind of people who seek you out?
Okay, well, I have a specialty in relationship issues. So I work with a lot of couples, and I also work with anyone who's struggling with relationship issues in their life. I have also worked for many, many years with people in recovery and people that have been through trauma. So those are my specialties. Mm-hmm. But I work with a big range of financial situations because I work with Medi-Cal through the city. I'm a provider. So I work with people that are very low income, and I work with people that own a house in San Francisco and have purchased it in the last few years. So they're higher up the pay scale. So it's a big range, and a big range of presenting issues, ethnicities, ages, et cetera, et cetera.
I remember I asked someone if they had a question, and they said that in his household, everyone had sort of hit the wall. They were kind of over it and asking, what next? What now? Since they've been doing this for a month, what next? How do they go? How do they go into tomorrow and next week?
Oh, what next? What is their situation? They're not working and they're getting paid, or
yeah. Well, it's a school teacher, but he's at home with his kids, and everyone's at home. And you talk about anxiety. What are we doing next week, Dad? And when is this all going to be over?
Right. Well, there's a way that I think some of these experiences, because kids don't realize it, but they're living history right now. I mean, they're going to be telling their grandkids about this. Mm-hmm. But I like to think that they're going to look back and some of the stuff they did to entertain themselves, or that their parents came up with to do, that wasn't something that they usually did, something creative, something different, that they're going to be some of the most precious moments in that family's history. Mm-hmm. There's like chalk art everywhere. I don't know. People are doing things that are different than they have been, and I hope people keep doing that. There's people sharing their ideas on the internet, and thank God for the internet right now, right? People are sharing ideas. You can, of course you can YouTube anything, but people are posting specific things about what they're doing to get through this, different activities you can do with your kids, different ages. There's people are doing with their roommates, they're doing skits, they're doing plays, they're using objects in their house, just to avail yourself of this opportunity to do something completely different.
And
And,
also,
some of that's going to turn out to be beautiful memories.
personally, what do you miss right now?
Oh my gosh, where do I start? Um, Seeing my friends, my gosh, in person. I want to see my friends in person.
Mhm.
Um, I miss, well, I love, love, love swimming, and I really miss swimming. And it's not even just the swimming, it's which makes you feel wonderful. I swim in the bay, and I call it my liquid Prozac because no matter how down I am before I get in that water, I come out happy. They say you're only one swim away from a good mood. But it's also the whole community of my open water swimming club that
Mhm.
I miss too. Yeah,
So,
it's
any
huge.
parting words, Allison?
Well, it's just my wish that this time of, change is something that will bring us together. As sappy as it is, I do think it's possible. And whether that's, personal with a relationship, roommates, friends, or just overall, that, the country comes together, the world comes together. We're all going through it. So, we all go through the same basic feelings, and we're going to cycle through them over and over again throughout our lives, the basic ones being, fear, anger, sadness,
Mhm.
happiness. And, I try to help people and myself to have acceptance for the fact that we're going to cycle through those. And the bad news is, inevitably, we're going to have times of sadness and fear and anger. But the more accepting we are of that, the shorter they become, because if we fight them, they really stick around. The
Mhm.
good news is that no matter how difficult whatever you're feeling is, happiness is inevitably on its way too.
Do you want to go back to the normal?
Well, in terms of people not suffering and dying
Mhm.
because of this, yes, absolutely. But I do hope for those unexpected silver linings, happy surprises in this. I mean, the world's not going to look like what it did. It's unknown. So, you know, fingers crossed it goes in a better direction.
Yeah.